For this week's um, video lecture, I want to do something a bit different. That is because I'd like to prepare you for a coming project that you might have seen on the syllabus called the Film Analysis Video Project. So I thought the best way for you to get what I'm talking about is to do one. So I have to do a few things here. I have to introduce my analysis of of Barbie, Greta Gerwig's Barbie, using Laura Mulvey's Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, that article, uh, while at the same time trying to do it in a format that you could see how you would do your own review. So hopefully I can pull it off. Let's see. Let's get started on my review of Barbie. Um, just a few points I have to make before I get started here. Um, Film analysis videos should be pretty much 10 minutes long. I wouldn't go too far over and I wouldn't go too far under. Don't go under. They should have substance, but also other people will be looking at them. So if they're very long, like longer than 10 minutes, that's kind of a burden on your peers. So try to keep them to 10 minutes. You are supposed to use classroom readings. I'm obviously doing that, but you can pick whichever one works and suits the film that you choose. And you can choose more than one. I'll just be using one. Also, while I am talking about a movie that we have watched together, you will be talking about a movie we have not watched together. So your film analysis video will include a brief plot summary, whereas mine doesn't need that. You will also, in your film analysis video, respond to what your peers have posted. And lastly, I highly encourage you to be creative to make this. You can use all kinds of multimedia, music, pictures, clips, do something different, whatever you want to do. Do it in a car. You're in a car, you got the camera up there. The important thing is, I haven't taught you how to do any of that, so I can't really grade you for that, right? It wouldn't be fair if someone came up with an awesome, well-produced video and um, did better than someone who had amazing content, but just doesn't know how to do those things. So those things might enhance the style part of your grade, but you can also get a good style grade for just being clear, just being really clear, and trying to make sure that you convey it to us somehow, however that might be. I'm using PowerPoint slides. That's not very creative. Um, but it works. Well, you be the judge of that. So I hope it's clear. It's up to you how you do it. I'm not expecting a big multimedia production. I'd love to see it, I won't lie. But you can very easily get an A or 100% or whatever by just doing something basic that you know how to do. Okay. So let's get started. Um, so Barbie. When I first saw Barbie, I actually saw it in the movie theater, and I had what you might describe as a really strong reaction to it, which is that I hated it. In fact, I think I commented to someone that it was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. Strange that it would be in this class that you're watching one of the movies that I thought is the worst films I've seen in my life. But I really, really disliked it. And I disliked it for a few reasons. To me, it represented the culmination of a kind of celebration of stuff, mass-produced garbage that I had seen since I was a child. G.I. Joes told us how to be. G.I. Joes were a series. You might know this because there's been a movie that's come out of it. Were toy soldiers for boys. When I was a child, you had toys for boys and toys for girls. And boys played with G.I. Joes, and they taught you to be patriotic and to be, like this is what a man is like, muscles and strength and all those things that you would see in like the 80s. And girls were supposed to be like Barbies. And who was telling us that? Mass-produced culture. Someone who was making money by profiting off of or profiting on um, uh, basically patriarchal views of the world, stereotypes, both ethnic and racial, and that was uh, that was how we grew up. Films and TV shows were often based on toys. They came out of toys. So like the trajectory of like let's say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was that first there was the excellent comic book series, which I actually own some of those. Amazing. Then Mattel, I think it was Mattel or Hasbro, decided to make these toys of the turtles. Well, in order to sell toys, what's more effective than a commercial is guess what? A cartoon. So they use Japanese animators very often and would push out these cartoons, which I have to admit were pretty great cartoons, but everything was connected in what's called the culture industry, which we'll talk about. And originally, I wanted to talk about Barbie in that context. You could think about the way that the film depicts things that are completely synthetic, that are completely removed from the real, which we've discussed as the hyperreal, right? But what bothered me more than anything was the way the film had a character, namely Barbie, the person that I'm supposed to empathize with, who has no character, who has no personality, and who all of a sudden one day just decides that she has some crisis. All of a sudden one day she's worried about death, and we follow her in some journey because of something that happens externally, not internally. It seems imposed on her, almost like the way a person gets sick, not the way a person changes from within or has an awakening. I thought the set pieces were well done, but a distraction. Plastic and they made it look like toys. Okay, great, I get it. But that doesn't compensate for the basics of good filmmaking, which is um, great character, some sort of narrative that says something about the human condition. I didn't see that there. Certainly, I saw feminist themes, but I saw them as sort of superimposed, right, on on a film that really ended up meaning nothing and going nowhere. Okay. And then I had a conversation with a female family member, and the very criticism that I just presented to you, I presented to her. And she said something that made me really think. When I said that Barbie changes not because of anything um, internal, but all of a sudden, almost like I said, like if a person gets sick or whatever. She said to me, well, that's exactly what it's like when a girl has her first menstruation, that it's this sudden change in her whole, perspective and shift about the things around her. And I thought to myself, oh, I have been judging this movie from my perspective without really appreciating those who could understand it, namely women. And so I reconsidered it and I watched it over and over again. And I've come to some conclusions about it that I hope to share with you. Now, when you look at um, Laura Mulvey's uh, extraordinary essay, which she wrote in 1973, but was published in 1975 in a journal called Screen, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, what is she doing? More or less, what she's doing is this. She's saying that psychoanalysis is telling us um, how to see the world and how to see ourselves. And psychoanalysis says certain things. So, for example, Freud was very interested in the first moment that a child realizes, let's say a child realizes that he has a penis, a phallus, and his mother does not, right? That realization creates confusion and becomes imagined for the child as what's called the castration complex, that the mother has been castrated, lost the penis. It gives this importance to the phallus. More importantly, what happens when a woman first sees a phallus, right? She sees that as something that she desires. Freud called that penis envy. Now, you've probably heard the term in popular culture used far differently. That's not how Freud used it. Freud was penis envy was something that women had. And Lacan develops these ideas and takes the phallus from being something that's just the physical penis to being an idea, something that shapes these are like kind of like uh, core units in the way we see the world. So the phallus is everything that's desirable, everything that we want. It's this, and when we don't, it's a sense of lack that we seek, right? For Lacan, our whole way of seeing the world is developed through the system of symbols and norms, and that starts to shape our view of things. So What Laura Mulvey says quite brilliantly is, look, this is a very, it is a, you know, these psychoanalysis, obviously, you know, they have issues. Um, but we can't certainly just dismiss them. Why don't we learn to speak their language and learn to speak their language for a certain cause or purpose, which is, if we can redefine these things, if we can look at them, study them, and then take the take things like popular culture that are affecting us and analyze them, what we can actually do is change the way people think. Because much more important than much more important than uh, social structures, institutions, are the institutions that are in our minds, the social structures that are in our minds. If we can change those, then we can finally start to address, you know, patriarchy, patriarchal structures. That's the brilliance of what she's doing, right? Um, how it applies to Barbie. So I hope you saw the quote in the previous. This is another quote. I won't read it. Um, please read it on your own. If you want, you can pause it and read it. But it's fascinating because what she says here is that um, Hollywood has taken the our basic ways of longing, the basic kind of eroticism that is within us that Freud describes, and some of that has to do with the phallus, and some of that has to do with the first encounters that we have, like when we first saw ourselves in a mirror. That's a very important point. That's called the mirror phase in Lacanian psychoanalysis. Um, so we first see ourselves in a mirror and we see this ideal version of ourselves and we want to stare at it. Laura Mulvey says what Hollywood does is take these kind of things that we have in our minds and use them to create what will appeal to us. Not make us think, not make us question things, not make us change things, appeal to those kind of not instinctual, but almost instinctual structures within us and support thereby patriarchal structures. Well, capitalism is one of them, but more, above and beyond all of that, it supports basically the same old system of oppression because, hey, now we feel good about it, right? Now we've seen this film and it's totally affirmed all the kind of all the ways that we look at the world. Um, she says, no, that's not what we want. She says, it's been said, it is said that analyzing pleasure or beauty destroys it. That is the intention of this article. What she wants to do is analyze the pleasure, destroy it, and let the cinema, basically the whole way of looking at cinema and film burn down to the ground so that it can be rebuilt in this new way. Um, that is much more intentional and doesn't support basically these oppressive structures. Um, it's a fascinating point that she makes, but if you stick Barbie into the equation and into Mulvey's analysis, I think you can see the problem. Does Barbie offer us something that's fundamentally questioning those structures and um, the basically the erotic and the patriarchal structures? No. What Barbie offers us, first of all, it actually aesthetically relies on the most um, stereotypical of those structures. Women are pink, women are feminine. Sure, there's weird Barbie, but even that she's an exception, right? Um, it's true that it's based on Barbie, but by virtue of that, that's how the film has to work. So, first of all, it relies on a lot of old symbols. Second of all, the switch that's made in the film is what? Imagine a world where Barbie is in charge and Barbie is important and Ken doesn't matter, right? What would that be like? Well, wait a minute. There's one major difference. Um, Ken is not subject to the gaze. Ken is not an object of desire. Ken is not, remember, in the real world, it's not that women are just ignored, they're oppressed. There's a big difference. The film doesn't get to that at all because it wants to flip things, but at the same time tell us that Ken's not important, that these men are put on the sideline. That doesn't really address the problem at all. Um, so what we get instead in the film, from my perspective, is we get uh, kind of a world of Barbie. And who cares about Barbie? We get a world that's completely artificial and synthetic and represents people's memories of what it was like to be, uh, a young girl in America playing with dolls, with these Barbie dolls. And the nostalgia aspect to me is seems to be largely what appeals to people. So I don't think it does anything that Laura Mulvey would suggest that cinema can do, alternative cinema can do. I think it does actually bolster uh, a lot of the same ideas that Laura Mulvey is opposed to, including a femininity. Um, e- um, sure, Barbie can do anything, and okay, great, she wears Birkenstocks. Um, but at the end of the day, um, we are supposed to admire her because she fits a certain standard of beauty that the Barbie doll had and that affected so many generations of women and made them think that they weren't attractive or weren't desirable. Now, all of that is supposed to be washed away in some big grand act of apology that's this film that has feminist themes. I don't think it works. I'm not falling for it. So that's my review. I'd say much of my views haven't changed. They're more informed. I would have before given it an F. Now I'll give it a C. And the only reason I'm giving it a C is that I'm realizing that the reason that the film appeals to people is that it means something to go to a film and feel like you're represented and you are seen and you are heard and you are understood. And I think the film does that beautifully. I think aesthetically, the film is brilliant. The set pieces, I get it. I understand that's not easy to do to make something look like you're playing with toys. The acting, um, Margot Robbie, I mean, wow. How can you both in one part of the movie be plastic and another part be human? She does that so well. The songs are good. The performance um, of Ryan Gosling, excellent. But none of that can compensate, from my perspective, for what I see to be a failed script. A film that tells um, a story that's not really a story about a character that's not really a character. We don't, if you had to sum up what happens to Barbie, why does she change? What does she change into? Um, what's the resolution? I mean, that she can be human. What is your point? What is she really choosing there? None of it really works unless you care a lot about Barbie dolls. So I can recognize that me as a man who was never interested in those toys can't appreciate it fully, but at the same time, um, I think that the things that the film is trying to accomplish could be accomplished in much better ways, differently. Again, that's just my opinion. That's my review. If you have questions, email me. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.